this episode is unique in that my wife. I'll just give a little background on the episode because you're gonna hear about this in the episode. But my wife had a conversation with me about a week after we did the interview with Russ Dizdar, and we were in bed that night, and she was asking about specifics about the interview, and I gave her some specifics on spiritual warfare that we had, talked about. And she says to me, I don't really believe in that. And I said, honey, I understand your position. I get it because it's not talked about, but I'm telling you, it's in the Bible. So it's real. and she kind of shrugged it off. I mean, and that night, she got sleep paralysis. The weirdest thing. I mean, I can't make that up. And the thing is, she didn't know what to call it. I had a feeling it was sleep paralysis. But then a few weeks later, she had another 2 nights where she had another, encounter with that. And by that point, she was afraid to go to sleep. I'm not going to say how all this ends because I'll let that interview, I'll let you get to it. But what it did was it allowed my wife to now essentially join us on an interview with Chris White. So what you're going to hear is my wife, Mandy, and Dan, and I, and Chris White have a conversation about sleep paralysis and pretty much go through the entire book that Chris put together.
Yeah, no, it was really neat having Mandy join us. As many of you, I'm sure, have heard, because I believe some of our listeners, I know that some of our listeners are also Canary Cry listeners. I'm sure that you have heard that the Prophecy Forum is coming to Dublin, Ohio, which is basically Columbus, Ohio, right next door. If you are not listening to Canary Cry and you aren't aware of this and you are in the area, the conference is November 14th to the 15th in Dublin, Ohio. If you want to get a discount on your tickets, the discount will expire on October 31st, 2014. Again, the dates are November 14th and 15th of this year. We are making plans to attend, such as the plans of mice and men, and sometimes God changes things, but Sam and I are vigorously trying our very best to make it to this conference.
We really want to go. It almost hurts if I can't go. It's
you should see him. He's practically cheering.
Yeah.
Anyway,
pain.
Yes. Anyway, so we're going to try to attend. We hope that you guys will too. We'll get to meet some of you. We're looking forward to meeting Gonzo Shimura in person,
and
Russ Dizdar. There's
Hagman,
Douglas Krieger, Douglas Woodward. These are just a few of the names of some of their speakers that they're going to be having.
Right.
It's going to be a dynamite time. Also, it'll begin 1:00 on Friday. And it will go till, I believe, I'd have to look more. I think it goes to like 4 or 5 the next afternoon on Saturday. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a dynamite conference, guys. So we hope that you'll come out and join us, and that we'll see you guys there.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess without further ado, I just want to say it was seriously a huge pleasure to speak with Chris White.
Oh, very much so.
We could have only hoped, a year ago to barely even speak with, Leonard Ulrich.
That was our life goal a year ago, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing, and it still is amazing. And, to be able to talk to Chris White after, watching so many of his, presentations and listening to his podcasts, and just somebody that we look up to a lot, and to be able to ask him questions about this topic and that he would help my wife out. I mean, that mm-hmm. greatly, I would say, quelled the fear that Mandy was feeling. And she got to at least tell somebody else about it who knew about it without thinking she was crazy. So it was really important. And I hope you enjoy this episode, because it was seriously probably the most enjoyable one that I've had so far, sitting next to my wife on a futon with a microphone. So Without further ado, episode number 13, Closer Than Close to Home, with Chris White.
Here we go. This discussion is under the blood covenant of Yahshua, explicitly without prejudice and under reserve.
Okay, so let's see. I grew up in I don't know if you'd call it nominally Christian family. My mom was a Christian, my dad wasn't, but we didn't really put too much emphasis on it in the house. I remember maybe, going to church, a handful of times growing up, but nevertheless, I kind of I had a heart towards the Lord in some sort of fashion, I think. I sort of erred on the side of Christianity when certain questions came up, I suppose. But I honestly believe there was some kind of, I really did, I don't know how to say it, want to believe it, I guess. And so anyway, as time progressed, go through high school and all that stuff, I got into all the partying stuff, drugs, alcohol, that kind of thing. And I also was in a band out of high school, and we ended up being a pretty successful band. We toured about 150 shows a year for quite a few years. It was together for about 10 years or something like that. And so that was certainly leaned itself towards all kinds of debauchery, but particularly alcohol and everything else.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask you? Because I'm a musician as well, and I've toured as well. Not as much as that, but what kind of band were you in?
Just pretty much straight up rock and roll. We were an original band, and we got compared a lot to bands like the Black Crowes and that kind of thing. So
okay.
it was just, we actually opened for bands like Lynyrd Skynyrd and stuff like that. So kind of southern rock, I guess you'd say.
Okay, cool. Just was curious.
So, and we've got one video, it's not really a video, but it's called Something's Got to Change out there by a band called The Loft. But anyway, it's on YouTube somewhere or another. But so that was a pretty but in the midst of all that partying and everything that was going on, I also was getting into a lot of the New Age ideas. I wouldn't say that I was really into the New Age, but and it kind of piggybacked with a lot of the conspiracy material too, which a lot of that, of course, is true stuff, and so it kind of had me believing a lot of other, I now know to be wrong things, particularly about Christianity, about Jesus, and all the things that people like your David Icks and Michael Tessarians and Jordan Maxwell's and all these people who give you really good information about conspiracy stuff, but they always say really wrong, negative things about Christianity. So I was getting all into that stuff too, the bad with the good, I guess you could say. So that was where I was at. I think the first thing that happened was that I before I became a Christian or anything, I quit drinking and smoking cigarettes, and I was just all in one day. I dropped them for various reasons. It was very difficult to do, but I was a severe alcoholic. I drank every day for 7 years or something like that, and that kind of cleared my head up to get me thinking a lot more deeply about some of these things, spiritual things, as well as all the things that I was learning and whatnot. And so I started doing more research about the conspiracy stuff, but with a particular emphasis on the claims about Christianity that a lot of these guys were making. I kind of wanted to figure out if it was true or not, because a lot rode on it. And I started to find out those things, particularly that they would say about Christianity, were false, and provably so. And that kind of didn't change my spiritual state so much as it changed my intellectual state about Jesus and thinking, why is everybody lying about him? It seems like everybody's going out of their way to say these things that are just totally not true about Christianity. And so I started actually trying to warn people about that in the truth movement stuff, and that was really where I think all the stuff that I do online started from, was me trying to, tell people that we were believing a lot of the false stuff. But it was around that time, somewhere around that time after I had stopped drinking. I was still in the band at that point too. I was. It was kind of an interesting thing. I mean, I was not, drinking or anything for 3 years after I quit drinking. So it was really a test of how much am I quitting drinking, because it was in your face all the time. It was a very difficult thing. But for what it's worth, those guys, I mean, they didn't know what to think about it, I mean, and one of the other things too, shortly after that, I did get saved, and I think there was a time before that I would have said I was a Christian, said the sinner's prayer and all that stuff, but there was a definite time, and I really can't put my finger on a date or anything like that, but I remember making a decision about following Jesus, and like, if this is all true and he's really who he says he is, then then he's the boss, right? I made some kind of heart commitment like that about Christianity and following Christ, and after that my life actually began to change in more ways than just the not drinking, which may have been a precursor to, or helped me to see clearly in order to be saved, but it wasn't a result of being saved. Anyhow, after that, I really did start to change in my heart and started getting different desires and different things like that. And that really freaked out the guys in the band, in a good way. I still, to this day, hear them say stuff about me like that, about they have good views about Christianity because of the things that, the way that I changed right before their eyes, living in close context with them. They were able to really notice that kind of thing. They never, as far as I know, they're not Christians now. But anyway, so after that, my life began to change, and I started to want to say, tell people about the gospel, particularly because, I felt like there was a time I felt like I knew the gospel and, said the sinner's prayer, but it didn't really do what happened when I, fully understood the gospel and really gave my, life to Christ in a kind of, I don't know how to say it, just sort of making him the Lord of my life kind of way in my heart. So I started doing a lot of evangelistic stuff, and that's when it really all started to come together, all the different areas that I was concerned about. And I started to get very passionate about the lies that people were saying against Christianity, and I started doing podcasts and then later videos about problems and people that I saw that were like the Zeitgeist movie, for instance. The Zeitgeist Challenge was offering people cash money to be able to prove the claims of that movie Zeitgeist, which makes all these ridiculous claims about Christianity. And that was something that I was doing. I was trying to, trying to tell the truth movement, look guys, we're all believing this, it's completely wrong. You guys are the ones that are claiming to, only follow the evidence and whatnot, and this is just wrong. And I couldn't get anybody to listen to me, so I started the Zeitgeist Challenge. But anyway, the documentaries, things, as I mentioned, people like David Icke and Michael Tessarian and Jordan Maxwell, I did sort of these little video exposés about them, and it really just, at that point, just snowballed into all kinds of different ministries and whatnot. I can't even think of all the stuff right now. I've never really stayed in one particular area, and this is the genre that I'm doing. It's as varied as you mentioned before, the Ancient Aliens Debunked movie, or we're going to talk about sleep paralysis today and that kind of stuff. So it's just all over the board. So ministry stuff, and that's kind of where I am today. And working on different projects and stuff now. I've kind of written a few books about Bible prophecy. It was something I was interested about. Now I'm kind of moving on to something else now. So yeah, I think that about covers it.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. We have with us, we have a little guest ourselves. My wife is here, and she